Sir, I need to see your papers now.
I'm an off-duty police officer. I don't think this is necessary.
Show me your papers now.
I already told you I served this country. Look at my badge.
That doesn't change anything. I still need your information.
Elijah Reed stood at the bus stop with his hands in his hoodie pockets, waiting quietly. He had finished a long day and just wanted to see his friend before it got too late. The bus stop bench was cold, so he chose to stand instead. Cars rushed past him, horns blaring, engines roaring. The sun was slowly dropping, painting the sky with soft orange light. Elijah checked his phone to make sure he hadn't missed the bus. He hadn't. He took a deep breath and tried to relax. He was off duty. No badge on his belt, no uniform. Just a man waiting for a ride, minding his own business. Before we go any further, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments and let us know. And if stories like this matter to you, stories that show truth, justice, and real life, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps these stories reach more people. Now let's get back to what happened next. Elijah didn't notice the two men at first. They walked up fast, their boots hitting the ground hard. When he looked up, they were already standing in front of him. Dark jackets, big letters, ICE. One was tall and thin, with sharp eyes that looked angry for no reason. The other was shorter and wider, his face tight with a crooked smile that didn't feel friendly at all. "Let me see your papers," the tall one said. Elijah frowned. "My papers?" he asked calmly. "Yes, now," the shorter one snapped. Elijah stayed calm. "I'm an American citizen," he said, "and I'm an off-duty police officer." The tall agent laughed out loud. "You a cop?" he said, looking Elijah up and down. "That's funny." Elijah reached into his wallet and pulled out his badge. "I serve this country," he said. "I protect people. I deserve respect." The agents barely glanced at it. The shorter one waved his hand. "That doesn't mean anything," he said. "People like you don't get to wear a badge." Elijah's heart started beating faster. "What do you mean by that?" he asked. The tall agent stepped closer. "You know exactly what I mean," he said. "You don't belong here, and soon you won't be." Elijah shook his head. "I was born here. I've served for 15 years. That's when the words turned cruel. They used racial slurs, ugly words filled with hate. They told him people like him should never be officers. They said he stole a job meant for someone else. Each word hit harder than the last. People nearby stopped walking. Some stared. Some pulled out phones. A woman whispered, "This isn't right." Elijah tried to stay strong. "You're crossing the line," he said. "You're breaking the law." The shorter agent grabbed his arm. "You don't tell us what the law is." In seconds, they twisted his arms behind his back. Metal cuffs clicked tight around his wrists. Pain shot through his shoulders. "Stop resisting," the tall agent said, even though Elijah wasn't fighting. "I'm not resisting," he said through clenched teeth. "I'm making a mistake." They shoved him toward their vehicle. As they walked, they mocked him. They told him he'd be deported soon. They laughed and said he'd be crying when he got sent back to where he came from. "I came from here," Elijah said quietly. A man across the street shouted, "Leave him alone! He didn't do anything!" The agents ignored him. The car door slammed shut. Inside the vehicle, Elijah sat in silence, his hands shaking, not from fear, but from anger and disbelief. He had arrested criminals, he had saved children, he had stood between danger and innocent people, and now he was being treated like he was nothing. What the agents didn't know was that someone had recorded everything, every word, every shove, every slur. By the time the sun set, the video was spreading fast. By morning, the country would be watching, and justice was already waking up. Elijah sat alone in the holding room, the cold metal bench pressing into his back. The room smelled like old coffee and cleaning spray. A single camera blinked in the corner, watching him like an unblinking eye. His hands were still cuffed in front of him now, but the metal felt heavier than before. Time moved slow. Every second felt stretched and painful. He kept replaying the moment at the bus stop in his head, the words, the slurs, the laughter. He had faced danger before, but this hurt in a different way. This wasn't a criminal attack. This was hate wearing a badge. Outside that room, something bigger was happening. Across town, a young college student named Renee Walker sat on her bed staring at her phone. Her hands were shaking. She had been at the bus stop earlier, waiting for her ride home. When she saw the agents surround Elijah, something in her told her to record. She didn't shout, she didn't interfere. She just held her phone steady and captured everything. Every demand, every insult, every lie. Now she watched the video again, tears filling her eyes. "This is wrong," she whispered. She posted it online with a short message. "This man said he was a police officer. They laughed at him. Please share." At first, only a few people saw it, then a few more, then thousands. By the time night fully settled in, the video was everywhere. People shared it with angry comments, broken hearts, and shaking hands. Parents showed it to their kids. Officers watched it in silence. Some cried, some slammed their fists into desks. News stations picked it up before midnight. Elijah Reed, an off-duty police lieutenant detained by ICE agents while waiting for a bus. Lieutenant. That one word changed everything. Inside the station, phones began ringing non-stop. Supervisors demanded answers. Commanders replayed the footage again and again. They saw the badge ignored. They heard the slurs clearly. There was no hiding it, no explaining it away. At 2:13 a.m., the holding room door opened. A nervous desk officer stepped inside. "Sir, your cuffs are coming off." Elijah looked up slowly. "Why now?" he asked. The officer swallowed. "Because everyone knows." The cuffs clicked open. Elijah rubbed his wrists, the skin red and sore. A senior supervisor entered the room moments later, face pale and serious. "Lieutenant Reed, you're free to go. And I'm sorry." Elijah stood up slowly. "Sorry doesn't fix this," he said quietly. "No," the man admitted, "but the department will stand with you." Outside, cameras flashed. Microphones were pushed toward him. Reporters shouted questions. "How does it feel? What do you want to say to the agents? Do you believe this was racism?" Elijah raised his hand. The noise faded. "I believe the truth speaks for itself, and the truth is already out there." By morning, the agents' names were everywhere too, their faces frozen in screenshots from the video, their words quoted again and again. Protesters gathered outside government buildings, holding signs made from cardboard and pain. "Justice for Elijah. Badges don't excuse hate." The agents were placed on leave that same day. Then came the court notices. By the end of the week, charges were filed: abuse of power, false arrest, civil rights violations. The courtroom filled fast on the first day. Elijah sat straight, wearing a clean suit, calm but firm. Across the room, the two ICE agents avoided eye contact. Their confidence was gone. No smirks, no jokes. The judge watched the video in silence. When it ended, the room stayed quiet. "This court will proceed," the judge said firmly. Outside the courthouse, Renee watched from the crowd, tears in her eyes again. She didn't know Elijah personally, but she knew she had done the right thing. And as the trial began, one thing was clear to everyone watching. This was no longer just a video. It was a reckoning. The courtroom was full long before the judge arrived. Wooden benches creaked as people shifted in their seats. The air felt heavy, like everyone was holding their breath at the same time. Elijah Reed sat near the front with his lawyer, his hands folded, his face calm but serious. He wore a dark suit and a simple tie. He didn't look angry. He didn't look scared. He looked ready. Across the room, the two ICE agents sat stiff and silent. They no longer looked powerful. Their shoulders were tight and their eyes stayed low. The confidence they had shown at the bus stop was gone. When the judge entered, everyone stood. The sound of the gavel echoed once, sharp and final. The judge's face was firm, with lines that showed years of seeing truth and lies battle in the court. Same room. This judge had seen many cases, but this one felt different. You could feel it. Even the walls seemed to listen. The prosecutor stood first. She spoke clearly and slowly, using words even a child could understand. She told the story of a man waiting for a bus, a man who had done nothing wrong, a man who said who he was and was ignored. She described how power was used like a weapon. She repeated the slurs out loud, and gasps filled the room. Some people lowered their heads in shame. Others clenched their fists. Then the defense tried to speak. They said the agents were confused. They said it was a misunderstanding. They said they were just doing their job. The judge raised a hand. "We will let the evidence speak," he said. The lights dimmed. The video played again. Every word echoed louder inside the courtroom than it ever had online. The laughter, the insults, the moment Elijah's badge was waved away like trash. One woman in the crowd covered her mouth. A man whispered, "That's evil." Even the jury sat frozen, eyes locked on the screen. When the video ended, no one clapped, no one spoke. Silence filled the room like a storm cloud. Elijah was called to the stand. He stood tall and raised his right hand. His voice didn't shake as he spoke. He told the court about his years of service, the nights he missed with family, the danger he faced without complaint. He talked about the bus stop, the pain in his shoulders when the cuffs were tightened, and the pain in his chest when he was told he didn't belong. "I serve this country," he said, "but that day my country didn't serve me." The words landed hard. Then came the turning point. The prosecutor called another witness, a fellow officer, a captain from Elijah's department. He spoke clearly. "Elijah Reed is a lieutenant in good standing," he said, "one of the best we have." That was when the defense broke. One agent shook his head. The other stared at the floor. Their lawyer whispered urgently, but it was too late. The truth was standing tall, and it wasn't moving. The judge leaned forward. "This court has seen enough," he said. The ruling came faster than anyone expected. The agents were found guilty on multiple counts: abuse of power, civil rights violations, false arrest. The words hit like thunder. Gasps turned into quiet cries. Elijah closed his eyes for a brief moment, not in joy, but in relief. Then the judge spoke again. "Justice is not just about punishment, it is about correcting wrongs." The lawsuit followed swiftly. Evidence stacked high, witnesses lined up. There was no escape. The final number was read aloud in court. $15.7 million. The room went still. The agents sat frozen. Their careers were over. Their names would forever be tied to that bus stop. Elijah didn't smile. He simply nodded. Justice had spoken, loud and clear. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed again. Someone shouted, "What do you hope people learn from this?" Elijah answered calmly, "Respect is not optional." And that message spread just as fast as the video once did. Justice had arrived. The morning after the court ruling felt different. Elijah Reed woke up before his alarm, staring at the ceiling while the sun slowly filled the room. For the first time since the bus stop, his chest felt lighter. The weight wasn't gone, but it wasn't crushing him anymore. Justice had spoken, but life still had to move forward. He sat up, placed his feet on the floor, and took a deep breath. Outside, the world was already buzzing, talking about him, about the case, about what it all meant. When Elijah stepped outside his apartment that day, something unexpected happened. A neighbor he barely knew nodded at him with respect. Another stopped to shake his hand. A woman walking her child whispered, "That's him." Not with fear, with pride. Elijah wasn't used to being seen like that. He had always worked quietly, letting actions speak louder than words. But now, his story belonged to everyone. At the police department, the parking lot was full long before his shift was supposed to start. Officers stood in small groups, waiting. When Elijah stepped out of his car, the talking stopped. Then, slowly, one officer began to clap. Another joined. Then another. Soon, the sound filled the air. It wasn't loud or flashy. It was steady, strong, respectful. Elijah felt his throat tighten. Inside the building, the chief waited near the front. He extended his hand. "Welcome back, Lieutenant. You should never have gone through that." Elijah shook his hand. "I didn't stand alone," he replied. A meeting was held that same day, not behind closed doors, but in the largest room they had. Officers of all ranks sat and listened as leaders spoke about what happened. They didn't sugarcoat it. They talked about race, power, and responsibility in clear words. They admitted failure. They promised change. For once, it didn't feel like empty talk. Outside those walls, the country kept watching. Schools talked about the case in simple lessons. Parents explained it to their children. Churches and community centers held meetings. People who never paid attention before were paying attention now. The bus stop became a symbol. Someone taped flowers to the bench. A small sign appeared that read, "Respect lives here." The two agents were sentenced soon after. Court orders were read, badges taken away, uniforms returned. They didn't look angry anymore. They looked small. The power they once held was gone. There were no cheers, just quiet understanding that actions have consequences. Elijah was offered many things: book deals, interviews, speaking tours, money beyond the lawsuit. He turned most of it down. He said, "I didn't do this for fame. I did this because it was wrong." What he did accept was a chance to help train new officers. He stood in front of young recruits and told them the truth in plain language. A badge doesn't make you better, it makes you responsible. One day, weeks later, Elijah returned to the same bus stop, same bench, same street noise. He stood there again, hands in his pockets, waiting. A bus pulled up, brakes hissing. The driver looked at him and smiled. "Good to see you, Lieutenant," the driver said. Elijah nodded back. "Good to be seen." As he stepped onto the bus, a young boy looked up at him. "Are you a hero?" the boy asked. Elijah thought for a moment. Then he smiled softly. "No," he said. "I'm just someone who didn't stay quiet." The bus pulled away. And in that simple moment, it was clear. Justice didn't just end in a courtroom. It lived on in people. The number followed Elijah everywhere. $15.7 million. People said it like it was his new name. Neighbors whispered it. Reporters printed it in bold letters. Strangers online argued about it day and night. Some said it was too much. Others said it wasn't enough. But to Elijah, the number felt strange and distant, like it belonged to someone else. He had never asked for a dollar amount. He had asked for respect. The money came later, after the truth had already stood tall. Elijah sat at his kitchen table one quiet evening, staring at the papers spread in front of him. Bank forms, legal letters, settlement details. He pushed them aside and looked at a framed photo on the wall instead. It showed him in uniform years ago, standing beside his mother. She had smiled so wide that day. She used to tell me, "Do the right thing, even when it costs you." He whispered those words to himself now. When the money finally arrived, Elijah didn't celebrate. No parties, no new cars, no big house. He went to work the next day like he always did. Same calm walk, same steady voice. But people treated him differently. Some looked at him with respect, others with jealousy, a few with doubt. One afternoon, a fellow officer asked him quietly, "What are you going to do with all that money?" Elijah paused. "Make sure this doesn't happen again," he said, and he meant it. The first thing he did was set up a legal fund. A simple one, nothing fancy. It was meant to help people who didn't have cameras, lawyers, or a loud voice. People who were ignored the way he had been ignored. He didn't put his face on it. He didn't name it after himself. He just made sure it worked. Then he visited schools.
Not big stages, small classrooms. He sat in tiny chairs and spoke in words kids could understand. He told them about fairness, about standing up for yourself without hurting others, about telling the truth even when your voice shakes. Teachers watched quietly from the back, wiping their eyes when they thought no one noticed. Parents started coming up to him after. "My son wants to be like you," one said. Elijah shook his head gently. "Teach him to be better," he replied. The media kept calling. Some shows were angry, some were kind, some just wanted drama. Elijah chose carefully. When he spoke plainly. This wasn't about hate winning, he said once. It was about hate being exposed. Meanwhile, the agents tried to appeal. It didn't work. The evidence was too clear, the video too loud, the words too sharp to erase. Their lawsuit loss stayed, their charges stayed, their lesson stayed. One evening, Elijah received a letter with no return address. Inside was a short note written in shaky handwriting. I saw the video. I'm scared every day. Thank you for showing me I matter. Elijah folded the letter and placed it in his drawer. That meant more to him than any check ever could. Months passed. The noise slowly faded. Another headline took its place. But something had changed underneath. Policies were reviewed, training manuals rewritten, cameras installed where they had never been before. Quiet changes. Real changes. Elijah knew the world wasn't fixed. He wasn't naive, but he also knew something important had happened at that bus stop. Power had been challenged, and power had lost. Late one night, Elijah stood on his balcony looking out at the city lights. He thought about that day again, the fear, the anger, the disbelief. Then he thought about now, the lessons, the voices, the future. The money was never the point, he said softly to himself. The point was that someone stood up and didn't back down. While Elijah Reed was trying to move forward, the two ICE agents were watching their lives fall apart piece by piece. The world that once protected them had gone quiet. No backup, no excuses, no one stepping in to save them. The same power they used so easily at the bus stop was gone, and without it, they didn't know who they were anymore. The taller agent sat alone in his small apartment most days, curtains closed, television muted. His phone barely rang now. When it did, it wasn't friends, it was lawyers, bills, notices stamped with red ink. He replayed the video in his head over and over, wishing he could reach back into that moment and stay silent. But the words had already left his mouth. The world had heard them, and the world did not forget. The shorter agent tried to pretend nothing bothered him. He told himself he was unlucky, that he was a victim of public opinion. But late at night, when the house was quiet, the truth crept in. He remembered the fear in Elijah's eyes, not the fear of arrest, but the fear of being erased. That memory stuck like a shadow he couldn't shake. They tried to find work. Doors closed fast. Security firms said no. Government jobs didn't return calls. Even private companies avoided them. Their names were typed into search bars, and the same video always appeared. Employers watched, then politely ended the interview. The lawsuit drained them. Savings vanished. Assets were seized. Cars sold. Homes lost. The $15.7 million wasn't just a number anymore. It was the sound of everything breaking. Friends stopped answering texts. Family dinners became silent and tense. Some relatives were angry, others embarrassed. A few told them quietly, "You brought this on yourself." That hurt more than the court ever did. One afternoon, the taller agent stood in line at a grocery store. A woman ahead of him turned, stared, and whispered his name. He felt his face burn. He left his cart and walked out empty-handed. For the first time, he understood what it felt like to be judged without a chance to explain. But there was no instant forgiveness, no quick way out. The court ordered them to attend civil rights classes, to listen, to learn, to sit in rooms where people spoke about pain they had never cared to understand before. At first, they crossed their arms and stayed quiet. Over time, the silence became heavy. Stories were told, tears were shed. Something shifted, not redemption, but awareness. Meanwhile, Elijah never spoke their names again. He didn't celebrate their fall, he didn't mock them, he simply kept living with dignity. That quiet strength made their shame louder than any headline. One night, the shorter agent wrote a letter. He never sent it. In it, he admitted fear, ignorance, hate learned and never questioned. He folded the paper and put it away, unsure if forgiveness was something he deserved. Justice was instant, consequences were real, but the hardest part wasn't losing badges or money, it was living with the truth. They learned too late that power without respect always destroys itself, and while Elijah's life moved forward with purpose, theirs stayed stuck at one bus stop, a moment that cost them everything. The bus stop looked ordinary again. Same bench, same cracked sidewalk, same sound of cars rushing by without caring who stood there. Most people passed it every day and never thought twice. But for Elijah Reed and for many others, that place would never be just a bus stop again. It was where truth was tested. It was where power was exposed. It was where justice began to move. A year had passed since that day. Elijah stood there once more, not because he had to, but because he chose to. He wasn't waiting for a bus this time. He was waiting for a small group of people who had asked him to meet him there. Students, young officers, community leaders. They wanted to stand where it happened, to understand it better. Elijah believed learning should happen where truth lives, not just in books. When they arrived, he greeted them with a calm smile. No drama, just honesty. "This is where I was told I didn't belong," he said quietly. "But this is also where people spoke up." He pointed to the bench. "That bench taught me something. Silence helps the wrong people. Speaking up helps everyone else." A young girl raised her hand. She couldn't have been older than 8. "Were you scared?" she asked. Elijah nodded. "Yes," he said. "But being scared doesn't mean you stop doing what's right." The group stood in silence for a moment. Cars passed, life went on, but something in the air felt different, stronger, kinder. Across the country, the case was still being taught, in police academies, in law classes, in homes. It became a reminder that justice only works when people protect it. That badges are symbols, not shields. That respect must be given to be earned. The video still existed online, but now it was paired with something else. Change. Policies rewritten, training improved, cameras installed. Most importantly, people paid attention. Elijah never called himself a hero. He didn't like the word. Heroes felt distant, perfect. He was neither. He was human. He felt pain. He felt fear. He felt doubt. But he also felt responsibility. On his way home that day, Elijah finally boarded a bus, the same route he had tried to take before. He sat by the window and watched the city move past him. A man across the aisle nodded at him. A woman smiled. No one stared, no one judged, just quiet respect. As the bus rolled forward, Elijah thought about the ripple that started from one moment, one choice, one video refusing to be erased. He whispered to himself, "This is what justice looks like. Not loud forever, not perfect, but real." The bus pulled away from the stop, and the world kept moving, just a little better than before.